Yeah, as Zach said, I am very comfortable being the woman behind the curtain, and I feel bad for all of my spokespeople who I've ever said, don't be nervous, because it is tough. So tip number one, if you do not like public speaking, make sure somebody on the team does and is comfortable. I'll just give you a little bit background about me, and then tell you about the worst crisis communication experience I've had, all of the mistakes I made, some helpful tips and learning lessons that I've had since then, and then I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I am the Director of Communications at Coinbase. I oversee product policy and institutional comms, and my day job is doing comms for our consumer product suite and our institutional product suite. Prior to Coinbase, I was at Gemini. I helped launch their custody product. And then before that, I spent 12 years at an FX brokerage called FXCM, and I ran their comms and investor relations. And that's the story that I'll tell you about. On January 15th, 2015, I got a phone call from our CEO at about 3:45 in the morning, and he said, get to the office immediately. Do not talk to anybody. Do not answer your phone. Do not answer an email. Frantically getting dressed, getting on the train. I live on Long Island, so the hour and 45-minute commute into downtown Manhattan was pretty interesting, reading the headlines. The Swiss National Bank had changed its monetary policy after 13 years with no warning. And so as the articles started to come in, they started to change to say FX traders who are on the wrong side of this are in big trouble. And then the headlines changed to which companies are impacted. And then the emails started coming in. It was Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Bloomberg. Were you impacted? Were you impacted? Investors, analysts, the New York Stock Exchange. Hi, Jaclyn, should we be halting the stock this morning? And I said nothing, and I did nothing, and I spoke to nobody. And when I got to the office, I ran to the CEO's office, and I'm like, what's going on? And he was frantic, and all of our other founders were like actual hair on fire, just running around, screaming, and I joined in. I got loud, and I was yelling at people and physically running through the office, printing documents, calling our bankers. Right at this point now, the international regulators were ring-fencing our capital. And there I am telling our sales associates and our customer service, business as usual. Don't tell the clients anything. We're business as usual. Still not answering one email from the media. I then got wind that we had the CNBC pulled up a truck with the big satellite outside of our office. There were multiple reporters downstairs looking for answers. And so we locked our employees into the office and we offered them pizza and we said, if you're gonna leave, you better take off your name tag and don't talk to anybody. Business as usual though, guys, but don't leave the office. And at one point I had walked into a boardroom and a bunch of our founders were crying, grown men crying. And so I started to cry. And I felt weird in the room, so I'm walking back to my office across a huge sales floor about this big, crying. As soon as I started crying, everybody else started crying. And we ended up losing 90% of our stock. We had to take a rescue loan from Jefferies. We ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. We had a cybersecurity event. So I've seen some shit, and I made a lot of mistakes. And that's where we'll get to the next part. I hate this title, by the way. I will say I do a lot of crisis comms. I don't always get it right, but that's where we'll learn together. So be the calm during the storm. You should be a shock absorber, not a shock amplifier. And that's for comms people, your founders, top people in the company. When there is a crisis, nobody should know that it's a crisis. You want to be taking the information in asking the right questions and trying to get to a solution, not freaking out. And the sooner that you immediately turn the switch, the better off you are. So asking questions like, is it just us? Is it somebody else causing this problem? Because you want to blame them if they're causing the problem. You have your own problem to solve for. But it's a lot easier on a comms narrative when you can say, but they messed up. Or is it everybody? How many customers were impacted? What's the financial impact? Is it material, not material? Do we have reporting requirements? Use facts. Do not exaggerate. Even internally when you're having conversations, try to stick to the facts, because the conversation that you're having internally will quickly turn to an external conversation. And if you're exaggerating internally or using the wrong language, it's really important that everybody's singing from the same song sheet, as I call it. Comms is often like the connective tissue between cross-functional teams, and so we're helpful to get the right people into the room. But as I said, we also know everything, and so we're the easiest tell. Still to this day, Coinbase is a remote-first company. I do not go to an office. A lot of people do. But when I do show up at an office, everybody's like, good or bad, what is it, what is it? And so regardless, good or bad, I'm smiling. How are you? What can we do? How can we talk? Stalker status. And this is twofold. So a comms person is stalking their founder, their spokespeople. The founder is stalking your comms person. The vibes need to be good. You need to trust this person. You need to listen to their counsel, but we also need you. We need your input. I can write a statement to give to media and slap your name on it any day of the week, but if it's not actually how you want to be speaking, if it's not in your tone of voice, if it's not true to the company, to the mission, it'll land poorly and everyone will be unhappy. Prep. Please take the time, especially in a crisis situation, to understand the questions that you're going to get from media, especially if we're going on broadcast. You have to be prepared with all of the tough questions that they're going to ask you and have a response. And even if that response is, I don't know at this point, you have to be able to quickly respond, because the second you start stuttering, then they know, oh, I got them, and they're going to press you and they're going to get tougher on you. So spend the time prepping and preparing and feel really confident. And then also the other side of stalking is stalking reporters. As a comms person, I'm pretty sure I've had some reporters want to call and get me arrested for stalking, right? If the second a media headline hits the market, if it is wrong and if it is hurtful to your company, there's no going back. And so making sure that they really, truly understand what is happening and how you've communicated to them, what they're going to communicate to the broader market has to be on point. And if it's not, then you have about 10 minutes to get it corrected. Another part of stalking is stalking their producers, stalking their editors. If we're in a crisis situation and we're going to go on CNBC or Bloomberg, it's agreeing to the topics in the discussion. You're not going to get away with not answering hard questions. There will be those hard questions. Go back to prepping. But if there are things that are completely off the table, you have to agree to that. And then also, something that people forget is when you see somebody on TV, there's that little line that scrolls underneath them. It's really important to negotiate with the producers on exactly what that says. That helps tell a broader story. And then we provide them with data and images, right? And basically handing them the package on a silver platter so that maybe I get exactly what I want out of the story. But when they don't play nice, we get rid of the media and we take them out of the equation. Now, we need the media needs us, but if they're not going to play fair and they are only going to write a one-sided story, we remove them. And we own the narrative, good or bad, and we just skip them. So you want to get in front of bad news. At Coinbase, we front ran the New York Times on a story about mission first. And at the time, I'm like, no one is ever going to work with me ever again. This is wild. And now it's such common practice, and I'm so glad we did it. And I encourage all of you and your companies, front run. Like, the media needs to be held accountable. And it's not something that you should be doing every day, but there are other solutions to it. But don't be afraid to say, this story is going to be terrible, so I'm going to tell my truth first. Another way we did it was we were working with the Wall Street Journal. We thought the story was going to be fair, but because we were prepared, we wrote a blog anyway. And as soon as the Wall Street Journal came out, and it was like, oh, this sucks, we put out our own blog. And we sent out a media alert to everybody, and we said, they're wrong, here's the truth. Or they're half right, but they're missing all of this important information. We do fact check blogs. And more recently, which we totally should have done earlier on, is responding to false rumors on crypto Twitter, and getting right in there and saying, this is wrong and here's why. Another thing is amplifying something that you know is not going to land well in the media. Just you announce it. And we had this during our layoffs, which was uncomfortable and sad alone. And then if you're going to read also about it in the papers, like, that makes it just 10 times worse. And so at the same time that employees found out that we were doing this mass layoff, we posted a blog. We had pre-recorded an interview with CNBC that launched at the same time. And we were the curtain raiser on the story, not anybody else. Don't let bad news linger. You have to act fast. And then another thing that we've deployed is friends and surrogates. So there are people that you know that believe in you as a founder, that believe in your company and your cause, that will defend you when you're not around, and that's helpful. But they also need to defend you when you're in a crisis and you need them. And you should have those people locked and loaded that you can reach out to say, hey, we're having this problem. Here's all of the facts. If you could get out there on our behalf. Because when I'm saying I'm from Coinbase, and they're like, okay, you have an agenda. But if you say you're from somewhere else and you're also saying that, it helps a little with the story. So we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. I occasionally run doomsday prepping sessions. I tell everybody to come to the meeting with a big tinfoil hat on, and we're thinking through the craziest things that could happen to us, that could happen in the marketplace, and we're drafting responses on how, what we would send as a quote to the media in a very timely fashion. When ETFs were maybe going to get approved, I had 20 disaster scenarios on things that I thought could happen. And I had responses that I could send to the media immediately. I didn't have a response for if the SEC's Twitter account was going to get hacked. But I had enough language that I knew how I wanted to react in a bad situation that I was able to pivot and make a decision pretty quickly. Example plans that you want to think about: security incidents, deaths, business changes and layoffs, and regulation. Hopefully the SEC stops just handing out Welch notices like they're candy, but in our industry, we should be prepared. You should have that in your back of your head of what the media strategy would be if, unfortunately, you're handed a Welch notice. Have a rapid response procedure in place, and we split this into brand and reputational rapid response or product, and it includes like key messaging, executive tweets, direct to client, customer service, white glove talking points for institutional clients, and then most importantly, employee communication, right? It's here's what's happening, here's what we're doing, here's what you can do, or it's here's what's happening, here's what we're doing, please don't do anything. Less jargon. Be honest in a crisis. Don't oversell, don't undersell. Be as honest as you possibly can. If it's a technical problem, don't use big technical words. If I know something is wrong and now you're speaking at me in a language that I have no idea about, I'm even more nervous, right? Less jargon, more real talk. Be nimble, be flexible. The crypto industry is changing by the minute. The media landscape seems to also be changing pretty rapidly as well. So the ability to adjust to new situations and change quickly is key. We're doing comms for projects and companies that the world has never seen before. Throw spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks. If it's not working, pivot. If it's not landing, change it. Don't sit there with a message that everybody hates. Make a change. And then lastly, be resilient. It's tough. I feel like I wake up every single morning and I open my eyes and I look at Slack and like my hair is on fire, I am drinking from a fire hose and the floor is falling out beneath me. And sometimes it's like that every single day for weeks on end. You have to be resilient. And so what we do is sprint and recharge. And if the sprint is going for too long, I'll have to have the emotional intelligence to say, I need to take a break. Either I'm being a bad manager, I'm being a bad coworker, I'm being short and nasty with reporters. It's like, I'm gonna go walk the dog, right? And you have to have that. Listen, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's not my problem. Like, you have to let it roll off your back. How many times I've seen somebody on Twitter like, the comms team at Coinbase really screwed this up. And sometimes they're right. And I'm like, yeah, damn, shit, we should fix that. And other times I'm like, you have no idea what I just went through, and that's mean. And so I tell the team, you have 24 hours to be upset about it. Call your mom, call your boyfriend, call your best friend, cry about it. You better come back tomorrow ready to go. My closer. Comms is hard. Crisis comms is even harder. Trust your gut. Stay honest. Rest when you need it. Be aggressive, but always be kind. And ask for help if you need it. Listen, we're changing financial services as we know it. We're changing the world. And nobody has all of the answers. Nobody has all of the tricks. So while we may be competitors in some aspect, like maybe I know something that you don't know, or I know somebody who might know the answer, ask for help, ask questions. And with that, I will open it up to questions from you guys.
Out of curiosity, so thank you, by the way, for the fantastic talk. That was really, really insightful. You mentioned right at the beginning about the result, right, and the fact that there was the bankruptcy and the kind of all of the pain, I guess, that was felt at the end of everything. Do you think that a different approach or a different comm strategy could have prevented or changed the outcome in the end, or would it just have eased the, the outcome happening?
We ended up losing our U.S. license. The CFTC stormed the office, right? There was a lot of bigger issues there. From a comm standpoint, I do think that we wouldn't have lost customer trust as quickly as we did. I think if we communicated up front and quickly and were honest with them, that people wouldn't have been pulling out their money in droves. So that's one huge, and the customer is key.
I got one. So Coinbase's CEO is quite public on Twitter and other platforms. I guess not all CEOs are naturally public in that regard. How have you managed Brian's online presence independent of Coinbase's comms efforts? Are there any challenges there, or anything you advise other CEOs for cultivating sort of a personal brand?
So I don't oversee Brian's comms. That's someone on my team. And also sometimes Brian just does whatever he wants. And so the prep and the preparation there is imagining what he could do and how we would fix it. That's one part of it. As a CEO, as a founder or founder-led companies, I do think it's really important that the CEO and the founder is out there. And if they hate public speaking as much as I do, then get a good partner that could be your showman, that's talking. And you could also do the written stuff, right? Like that's super easy and gets to a lot wider audiences that way.
I missed the first few minutes, so sorry if you already covered this, but when it comes to working with founders, especially at an earlier stage, or an executive brand that maybe not is as big as Brian's, and you're communicating the outcome of a crisis comms campaign to them, how do you communicate and define what success looks like to them, especially if they're going through it for the first time, and look to a comms plan to solve a lot of what might have caused the crisis to begin with?
Yeah, one thing that I look at, and I do think it's kind of funny, sometimes online, it will appear as if things are going very poorly for us from a reputational standpoint. And I always go back to the team and I'm like, how much money has been left the platform? How many people have closed their accounts? Right, so the sentiment that is on crypto Twitter and the actual reality of how has this impacted our business are two very different things. And I think they're both equally as important, but the revenue side, it's definitely more important, right? And so maybe people are like, wow, Jaclyn sucks, and she did a terrible job on this. I know that nobody left, clients aren't closing their accounts. And I'm thinking of this more from like the type of business that I'm working for today, but I do think that you have to be grounded in the reality of how bad was this for the business. You could also look at our stock price, right? That's a key indicator on how we're doing on comms.
Hi, how important is it to get buy-in from other departments across the business? And how do you achieve that? So things like products teams, legal teams, compliance teams.
Up front, you should have a good idea of who needs to be signing off on this type of data. I would say key people are obviously the CEO, the founder. Legal is our friend. Although Brian has given comms the ability to override legal if the risk parameters somewhat not as big. Marketing and product. I mean, from a product comm standpoint, I won't say boo unless one of my product, VPs has signed off on it.
Enjoyed your presentation. Well, what's the nexus between communications and marketing? Meaning that, for example, Coinbase took a pretty aggressive approach from a communications perspective regarding the SEC. And how does that feed into like the marketing approach and so forth? Because would you say communications has to be more tactical in a way, and communications is more strategic, or I don't know how you think about those things.
Yes, but we work very closely together, and actually at Coinbase, comms sits within marketing. So my boss is Kate Rao, our Chief Marketing Officer. And so if we know we're going to do, when we received our Wells notice as an example, and we were going to have Brian and Paul record a video that was going to go live at Consensus, and we had media lined up. The marketing team was also working on social aspects. They worked on the video, right? So it's like working together. Whatever comms is saying, marketing is supporting through our advertisements, or vice versa. Marketing's like, oh, we're going to do this cool thing on the happening. And so then we created a whole comms plan on how we could support the work that brand was doing. And like marketing also focuses way more on getting folks onto the platform, trading, using the products. Luckily, comms isn't held accountable for that.
All right, that was really great. Jaclyn, thanks for doing that. A lot of great insights there. Great questions from the audience, by the way. Thank you so much.